is Lori Schkufza. I'm an animator by profession and an illustrator by, enjoyment. It's not how I make my money, animation is. And I'm the animator for CreativeMornings. So if you see the donut gifs, that's me. But I am not going to be talking about animation. I actually hate talking about it. So I'm going to be talking about silence. And when I say silence, what I mean is white space. And this is a concept that I can't take any credit for coming up with. I came to it by someone else, and it's just something that really resonates with me. And when I talk about white space, what I mean is breathing room, intentional moments where you're not creating anything, you're not hustling, you're not working, you're not studying, you're not doing anything. You're just basically getting downtime. And for me, that's in the interest of not burning out. And not burning out became something that was very important to me. Finding time where I wasn't working became a priority when I was in college. So I went to a school that was on a trimester system or schedule. And it was extremely intense, and the animation program was extremely intense. And I went through my first 2 semesters. I sat down with my advisor, I sat down with my father, and I said, I don't care how long it takes me to get through college, because I'm not going to do it in 4 years. Because I cannot take a 3rd semester every year and get anything out of this program and not burn out in the process. So we decided, okay, I was just never going to take summer semester classes. And that was fine. It worked out great. So what did I do during that downtime? My first year, I went back to New York from California. And I had a lot of time to myself. I wasn't really doing anything. But at the same time, I had no direction. It was basically like being in high school again, but you're not. You're just kind of hanging out at home, not having a job, and hanging out with your friends. So my second year, I stayed in San Francisco in my tiny Tenderloin apartment, which was right by the library, and I read Proust, which I'm really hoping that that's the most pretentious thing that I say today. I don't think anything can top that, so just hold me to that. And don't ask me about it, because I don't remember anything from those 4,000 pages. And then things started to get more interesting in my 3rd year when I went to Korea. And I just had a backpack and a plan where I started in Incheon, I went down to Busan, and I worked my way back up to Incheon. I basically made a loop around the country. And I prepared relentlessly for this. I had my Lonely Planet, and I had highlighted everything to the point where basically every night I knew exactly where I was staying and what I was going to be doing. So it was extremely curated. Next year, things got a little bit less curated. I went to the Western Balkans, or what was formerly Yugoslavia, in order to see something of where my family comes from. And for that, I was there for 2 months, and I had much less of a plan. I flew into Serbia, I made a loop through all the republics, and I left from Serbia. That was all that I had planned. Some days I would just get off a train or get off a bus and basically wander around town looking for a house that had a sign in the window that said there was a room for rent. And if there was a nice enough looking lady, I would go and say, I'd like to stay here for the night. And it was great. And so while I was in Slovenia, I went to Bled and I met a boy. Now, I am a firm believer in the idea that boys are a perfectly good reason to get into things. There's nothing wrong with that. So I met a boy, and he was gonna go climb a mountain the next day. And so we had gone out for drinks, we had gotten pretty plastered, and he had asked me, do you wanna go climb this mountain with me tomorrow? And I said, yeah. I have a pair of army boots, which are not practical footwear. I have this shoulder bag, I have a bottle of water, and I have 4 cookies that were left over from today, and I'm gonna insist that we share them. And he had a rickety little map that someone in town had drawn for him that basically said, okay, you hitchhike out here, you walk straight, you turn left, and then you go up. And it took us like the whole day to get up this mountain, and it was great. It was something that I didn't realize I liked. It was something that I didn't realize I wanted to do so badly, that I could get so much out of it. And I love this picture. You know why? Because it's terrible. I look awful. There was no, wait, this is bad, let's do it again. It was just, okay, we made it to the top. You can't see anything because it's so foggy. This is the best we get. So I had left Europe and I had gone back home, and this was just, I couldn't get this out of my system. So I got back to California and I had a social club there. And it was basically me, my older brother, his roommate from grad school, one of our mutual friends, and another guy. And we would brew beer, we drank heavily, we brewed beer, we went to concerts, we just would hang out. And this was my social group because my group in college was lame. All they wanted to do was work all the time. And there was absolutely no socializing. So what we would do is every year, someone would put together a list of potential activities for us of what we would do the following year. And I don't remember anything that was ever on any of the lists, except this one year, my brother had said, let's hike the John Muir Trail, which is 211 miles from Yosemite Valley to the summit of Mount Whitney, which is the tallest mountain in the continental US. And so I'm high off of these 2 years of backpacking with camping experience that basically was a couple of weekends in Death Valley and some car camping. So, which is not to knock any of that. That is not my intention. It's just, they're 2 totally different things. So I was like, once again, all right, I have no experience, I have no gear, but this is what I want to do. And thankfully, I wasn't the only one who wanted to do it. So yeah, our social club was called Gorilla City. So this was the like hiking emblem that I made for us. It's a little crass, but we were kind of a crass group. Ultimately, it was my brother, our friend Dave, and his little brother Jason. So it was like Schkufza cook sibling bonding. And we were ready, we were gonna do it. So we got gear, took about better part of the summer to start getting all of the stuff together. And we trained for it, which was, hiking around the Bay Area, which was, probably the perfect place to be doing this, to be getting into it. Just because you had mountains galore and just all sorts of like day trails that you could do. And we would take weekend trips down to Big Sur. And we would pack our backpacks, basically carry all of our weight and practice for the weekend. Like, okay, we're gonna go 15 miles, we're gonna stop, we're gonna camp, and then we're gonna walk the 15 miles back. And we would run. And to this day, I hate running. I can't do it. Years of concussions has made running really unpleasant. So we were ready to set out. And this is us. really idealistic and excited at the trailhead, and absolutely no idea what we were getting into. We had a hiking plan for 21 days, and we did it in 20. And so this is us at Trail Crest on Mount Whitney, which is the spot on the mountain where you drop your packs and you do the last scramble to the top. And that's the top of the world from the lower 48. And in between these 2 points was a myriad experiences that, no matter how much you train for, you're not prepared for. There's the realization that, you put this pack on and you think for all the training that you've done, you're used to carrying like 40 pounds on your back and putting in miles every day. And every day those miles feel worse and worse. So there's carrying the weight, there's putting in the time, there's putting in the miles, there's being dirty all the time, like layers of sweat, covered in layers of dirt, covered in bug spray, it's sunblock. And every day you're just putting 4 new layers of that on. And you're lucky if you get to find maybe one decent water source where you can kind of sponge bathe yourself. But cleanliness is an illusion, and eventually you just get used to it. And you get used to sharing a tent with someone who's equally as disgusting as you are. And there are the really cold mornings, the mornings where you put on all of your clothes and your bare vault is frozen, and you have to force feed yourself your oatmeal because you hate oatmeal, but you need the calories. And then there's nosebleeds. And I had like a million nosebleeds because of elevation. And it was just joke around about it. There wasn't proper bear safety. And all of this is to say that it's not a sufferfest. I point out the bad because it contrasts with the good. You can't have the experience of this stuff without getting the payoffs of enduring all of that, pushing yourself to the point that you didn't think you could, but not overdoing it. Pushing yourself, getting to the top of those summits, seeing these views that, I wouldn't have seen, I wouldn't have experienced had I stayed home, had I stayed just taking classes. The first 13,000 foot peak feels impossible. And then the next one just gets easier. And I think this stuff, like being out here, being cold, being dirty, being bloody, being afraid of bears, it all pales in comparison to that payoff. So I'm a fairly anxious person. I can find a way to stress out about anything. It's my superpower on my CreativeMornings profile. And I have to prepare relentlessly for things. I have to have a plan. And if I'm not in control of things, if I'm not micromanaging something, I am not thriving. Like, chaos is not an environment that works for me at all. And I particularly feel this way when things don't go according to plan for me, when I feel like things aren't flowing the way they're supposed to be. And specifically, I cite moments where I lose touch with what I want from my career, which I hate to say it, but after 10 years of having my career, I have this feeling frequently. And I'm beginning to think that that's just the way it is, that that feeling doesn't go away. I feel this way when I have lean times of finding work, which, being an animator, you're kind of always in lean times of finding work. But usually you come out of it. But those moments of uncertainty where you don't know what's coming next are excruciating. I feel this way when jobs stop being creatively stimulating. And I feel this in times of crisis in my personal life. Like right now, our kitchen ceiling is gone. So that creates some chaos in my life. And the only thing that I found that combats these feelings, the only thing that keeps it in check, is to pack my bag, plan a route, and to go out somewhere. So when I left California, I had lost my hiking group, because finding people who fit both ends of that, where they have the time to hike and they also have the means to do it, most of those people you're not going to find. Either people have the time to do it and they don't have any money, or they have the money, but it's, I can't take time off from work. So I had come back from California. I didn't have a job. I had zero direction. The job that I came out of was making games for Facebook. And I had just assumed, well, okay, I'll keep doing that. But in my heart of hearts, it really wasn't what I wanted to be doing. And to make matters worse, I wasn't finding anything. So I felt like I had no options, I had no direction, I felt like a loser, and I didn't have this circle that I had had in California. So I felt like I wasn't even starting from the bottom. I felt like I was starting below the bottom and having to build myself back up from it. And at the time, an old friend of mine was coming back through New York, and she had just come off of a thru hike of the Appalachian Trail. And so I got a hold of her and I said, hey, let's go out for some beers. I want to talk to you about the AT and whether, it's a totally outrageous idea for me to tackle that by myself. So we went out, had a whole night of just swapping stories about Lyme disease and bears and bears and bears. I'm preoccupied with bears. And I've never seen one. Probably because I'm so preoccupied with them. And so we talked about it, and the more we talked about it, the more I thought, I should just do this, because what other prospects do I have? I don't have anything now. I'm like living in my dad's spare room and feeling like a loser. So I'm just going to do this. Now, there's a difference between section hiking and through hiking a trail like the AT, which is, John Muir was 200 miles. The Appalachian Trail is 2,200 from Georgia to Maine. So the way I like to look at this, the way a lot of people look at this, is section hiking where you only do a little bit at a time. It's like 90% physical and 10% mental. Because every time you go out there, you have to rebuild up your strength. You have to get used to the weight and the miles and just being out there. And mentally, you're great because you're not slogging through like 1,000 miles at a time. Whereas through hiking, it's the reverse of that. It's 10% mental, or it's 90% mental, and it's 10% physical, because you get back into shape really quickly, and then you're just dealing with the mental hurdle of being out there and finishing. So I'm a section hiker. I go state by state because that's usually what I can manage in between jobs without feeling like I'm disrupting my life, without feeling like I'm in this suffer fest of a chore where it's like, okay, I don't really want to be out here anymore, but I've committed to it, so I have to blow through it. Section hiking is a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a lot more manageable for me. And so that's what I've been doing. Now, the big hurdle with this was that I was going by myself, and so I had to carry everything. On John Muir, I had the luxury that I was splitting gear with my brother. Like between the two of us, we only had one tent, we only had one stove, we only had one cook pot, we had one water filter, we had one shit shovel. I don't carry those anymore. I don't think they're necessary. I think you can get away with a hiking pole and a conveniently shaped rock and a jam. The shovel is just a lot to carry, and it doesn't fit anywhere in a good way. So things you learn, as you do this stuff. That's unnecessary gear. So this is everything that I carry except a toothbrush. I carry that, but I didn't include that here. Just forgot. Let's just pretend that it's in the first aid kit. And this kind of gives you a basic idea of everything, but really, one stuff sack is filled with all the clothes that I carry. The bare vault is filled with 9 days worth of food. And so the weight adds up quickly. I think my pack comes in at about 37 to 42 pounds because I am not lightweight. And something that I always insist on carrying, even though it's extra weight, it's indulgence, is a book. My top picks are Moby Dick, Travels with Charlie, and East of Eden. I bring books that I've read, I bring books that I love. In Cold Blood got me scared at night, so I don't bring that anymore. And that little guy between my backpack and the water bottles, that's Snufkin. He's my hiking companion. He hangs off of my backpack, and it sounds silly, but it's like I'm not by myself. And that's, once you get past all this, once you get past I'm carrying all of this, I have my plan, the next biggest hurdle is I'm alone. And realizing that you're alone, you have to have a good attitude. Because if you're dwelling on the negative stuff, you're just gonna get jammed up. And something that is enjoyable is gonna start feeling like a sufferfest. So I took this idea on John Muir, where you have to stay positive about things. One of our friends in the morning, when we would be going over our maps and looking at what we were doing for the day and saying, okay, we're gonna stop here, we're gonna stop here, we're gonna meet up here for camp for the night. And then we would split up and we'd be on our way. But then sometimes you'd be looking at the map and you'd see those topo lines that were really close to each other, the ones that are like right on top of each other. And our friend would look at this and you'd say, oh, today's gonna suck. And I put up with that for about 2 days until I sat him down and I said, I can't do this if you're gonna be that way, if any of us are gonna be that way. I just can't look at the map and say, this is gonna suck. Like, let's change our lexicon here. Let's just say, I don't know, today's gonna be challenging. It's like, I know that translates to sucks, but because I'm not outright saying it, I feel a little bit better about it. Then it's like, you're slogging up these switchbacks and you go, man, this is challenging. Instead of, I want to go home and eat real food that's not cooked in a plastic bag. And so, I kind of learned from that staying positive it sounds so hippy-dippy and it sounds so everything that I hate, but it's true. we could be eating each other, but the problem is your negative attitude. And so I set out, I'm by myself, I've got this pack weight, I'm terrified of bears, but I'm like, hey, this is where I want to be. This is great. And you know what I'm not thinking about? I'm not thinking about how I don't have a job. I'm not thinking about how I don't know what I'm doing with myself. I'm not even thinking about the nonsense to-do list that's running through my head of, okay, I have to do X, Y, and Z, and I have to cold email all these places, and I have to update my reel, and I have to put new stuff on my resume. No, I have 2 thoughts in my mind when I am by myself. And these 2 thoughts are, where am I camping for the night, and where's my next water? And I mean, these are big things, right? Like, the water is a really big thing because I came off trail once from dehydration. So now I'm real cagey about water. But, you know, this stuff puts everything into perspective. All my worries from home, all my worries from work, just kind of gets silenced. And it's not like those worries get buried. At home, I feel like they get buried if I'm just distracting myself with something. But when I'm out in the woods, when I'm out in the mountains, these concerns just don't feel big anymore. And I know it's kind of privileged to say that, right? Because yeah, these things are big. I don't have a job. Like, that's a big thing to worry about. But in the immediacy of it, it just kind of puts it into perspective of, okay, I just have to make it to the next day. I just have to, you know, get to the state line, and then I get to go home and deal with this stuff when I've gotten space from it, when I've gotten some breathing room, when I haven't been agonizing over these things, so that stuff can just naturally fall back into place, or fall back into that rhythm that I had lost in the first place and came out there to find. So what I do is I zone out a lot when I'm out. And these are, you know, probably 2 great places to zone out when, you know, feet in the water, always downstream. Gotta be responsible. Or when my feet are soaked in my shoes on a ridgeline in the sun, waiting for them to dry. And it's just not thinking about anything in particular. I literally zone out, and I'll get like commercial jingles stuck in my head. I think the most obnoxious one was I got that Daisy sour cream jingle stuck in my head, and now it's in yours. So, sorry. For like 3 days, I couldn't get rid of it. Or dialogue from old episodes of The Simpsons just run through. Like, I'm not having heavy thoughts out here. It's like a cartoon jug band going on in here. And it clears out the cobwebs so that I can go back home and deal with, you know, the fact that my kitchen ceiling is on the floor. And, you know, pick up those pieces and put them back together. And when I'm out there, the ideas they'll come in and out of my head for projects. And if I'm at home, I'll immediately take note of it and go, hey, that's great. What do I have to do in order to make that happen? I'm gonna put it on my to-do list, and it's just gonna fester. It's just gonna linger because, you know, I really don't have the drive to do that stuff. And so when I'm out, if ideas come into my head, I just let them come and go. You know, if I found that if they're worth it, if they're good enough, it'll keep coming back to me. And eventually I get home and I'll do something with it. Like, this is something that I couldn't get out of my head when I was in Isle Royale, where some researchers left one night to go dig up this moose skull, and they brought it back to camp and it was covered in moss. And I just thought it was this really striking image. I couldn't get it out of my head. And was like, okay, that's cool. And then I got into my sleeping bag later that night and it came back. I was like, that's cool. Next day, I'm hiking out to my next site. Still, it keeps coming back. And so I came home and I finally put this down to paper. And that's why getting these moments where you're not concerned with anything else, you just have this downtime, that's why it's so important, because you end up getting the good ideas from that. And I get a lot of these ideas in early morning. It's usually when I do my best clearing of the cobwebs, where no one's out yet, just going at a slow, easy clip. I have all the time in the world to get to where I'm going to, and all I can do is just look down at the trail ahead of me, notice things around me, and not think about anything in particular. I notice flowers a lot. I've gotten a lot better at identifying them from having seen so many and doing a series on them. And then, at the end of the day, I get to my campsite, either a tent or a shelter. Shelters are a lot more creature comforty than tents, but I love my tent. And, once you get into camp, you're not alone. There's other people there. And that's when you get to exchange, how your day was, where you were coming from, where you're going. What cool stuff did you see? Did you see a bear? No, I saw some signs of one, but I didn't see the bear. Oh, that's cool. There was one that came through camp this morning. Awesome. And I think ultimately for me, it's that you're out in this place and that you're seeing these really amazing spots that you're just not getting at home. And don't get me wrong, I love home, but walking down Delavan is not going to be as fulfilling for me as, emerging from a valley into this mist-covered field, at dawn after having spent a terrifying night by myself. But that terrifying night, it just rushes away in the morning when you emerge from, your anxiety and you come out into this. Or, you get to wake up in the morning, walk out to the water, make your coffee, and just sit and mull over the fact that I have nothing to do today except walk. And I think ultimately what this experience has done for me, what almost a decade of backpacking has done, is it's given me back my confidence in these moments where I just let my anxiety get the better of me, where I dwell on everything that's going wrong and not according to plan. I came back from that first state on the Appalachian Trail. Did I get a job when I came home? No. Did I eventually? Yes. Did I have a better idea of what I wanted to be doing? Yeah. I didn't want to be making games anymore. I wanted to work in education, making animation for that. And that's what I've done for years now. And so I think, if you're going to take anything away from this, just get out of the city. Go out into the woods, go out to the water. Just don't bring a to-do list. Don't worry about the things that you have to be doing tomorrow or in an hour. Just take some downtime. It can be an hour, it can be whatever. Just intentionally don't do anything. Just sit outside and enjoy it. Some routes are hard, but You know, some that are really hard, they usually have a path telling you what the easy way to go is, and it's perfectly acceptable to take that easy route. So, it doesn't have to be a sufferfest. Just set work aside, turn your brain off, get some jingles stuck in your head, eat some terrible food, and enjoy the scenery.